We are working with the Ukrainian Red Cross, who have been working around the clock, actually, in terms of the number of people who've been displaced within Ukraine. So there are 30 reception centres there in Ukraine, in Western Ukraine, where we have people who are seeking shelter and safety. There's also a huge number of people who are living in host families, and there are those who have moved across the border and who are in transit, and those who have found a destination in a neighbouring country.
Where are most of these people moving to?
So we've seen the largest number of people crossing the border at Poland. Also large numbers coming through Hungary, also Slovakia, Russia, Belarus, Moldova, Romania. However, we also know that people are continuing to move once they've crossed the border. There continue to be large numbers of people in Poland, but Germany, Czech Republic, Italy, Austria, these are all countries that we know that people are finding family, friends, connections, and potentially, a place where they could start to find a sustainable life for themselves in the interim.
And what numbers is the Red Cross seeing across Europe?
We have already assisted 800,000 people across the many countries that have been affected by people who've been moving from Ukraine into neighbouring countries. We have seen over 3.5 million people cross a national border, and we understand that there are 6.5 million displaced inside Ukraine itself. So these are people who need shelter and safety. We also have seen 18 million people in need of aid of some sort. So it's a massive undertaking. It's an emergency operation of the scale that you don't see very often.
What has their journey been like? Can you share with us some of their experiences?
People are telling us that they're just exhausted. It's been 1 month since the conflict broke out. Even for those people whose houses are not destroyed, they face, in those conflict areas, they face daily air raid sirens, which mean that they need to go down to bomb shelters in the middle of the night, taking their families. People have been sheltering in subway stations and trying to find safety wherever they can. The reception centres are difficult places. They're overstretched and strained, and people have travelled very long distances. So once they arrive in a safe place, whether that's in Western Ukraine or across the border, they're tired, they're grief-stricken, they're anxious. There's a lot of fear. As we know, most of the people crossing the border are women, children, and the elderly, and many adult men have remained behind in order to fight in this conflict. And so there's a lot of uncertainty. What will happen to loved ones who've been left behind, and what's the future of their country? So in that way, there's an incredible amount of work that we need to do to support these people in terms of their basic needs, but also in terms of their dignity and their well-being.
For how long are you expecting to provide aid to refugees from Ukraine?
I think most people who crossed over and who moved in the early days expected that this would be a short stay, a couple of weeks, a break from the relentlessness of living under, in a conflict situation. I think now people are starting to realise that this could last much longer, and their reserves are running out. With the huge destruction of housing stock in eastern Ukraine, we know that shelter and homelessness is going to be an enormous issue. And so with the reconstruction and rebuilding required, as well as a huge number of people who've lost their homes and their belongings, we can see that the recovery on this is going to be a very long journey.
How well placed are aid agencies to continue meeting those needs?
Well, this will be a joint effort. So we've already seen a community that's incredibly resilient. Within the Red Cross, they've had literally thousands of spontaneous volunteers, many of them displaced themselves, who are volunteering within their own shelters, within their own communities, in order to support each other. So the Red Cross offers an opportunity to organise and support them. We've got access to a global supply chain, so we're able to bring things in from across Europe and further abroad, so that we can actually provide the material goods and assistance that people need, as well as the technical support that people need in water and sanitation, hygiene, camp management, these types of things. And so therefore we are well placed, but we will be also working with the people themselves and with national governments. This needs to be a strongly coordinated response we need to make sure that we reach the highest possible standards and we all work together as the international community and also with those local communities that are at the front line of this.
And Jess, I know we're far away, but how can those of us in Australia help?
Well, the first round in terms of supporting people has been around material assistance. We've been putting a lot of material goods in the hands of people. But actually, when it comes to the medium term and the long term, what we really need is to provide financial support to people. We're setting up cash transfer programming so that we can actually put money into the hands of displaced people, which means that they're supporting the local economy and they can also make sure that they get what they need in a way that's dignified and appropriate to their needs. So people don't need blankets in the long term. They need to be able to buy their diabetes medication, get new shoes for their kids, and buy some school books for their children. And so Australians actually can support the Australian Red Cross Emergency Appeal, redcross.org.au, and make a contribution so that we can make sure that that assistance gets into the hands of people who've been affected by this conflict.
Well, thanks for sharing that information and for all the work that you and the Red Cross do. Thanks so much, Jess.
Thanks, Yvonne.